Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar, where we're going to be joined by Jake Barker from Redington, who's going to talk through his experiences of starting a career in cybersecurity with no tech experience. Just a few words to introduce myself. My name is Lisa Jones. I'm a career consultant here at the Officers Association. I'm an Army officer by background, and after I left, I joined financial services for about 9 years, where I worked in investment banking. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Jake, who is very kindly joining us this evening to talk through his experiences. Hello, Jake.
Hi there. So my name is Jake Barker. I'm the Head of Information Security at Redington. Redington are a small investment consultancy in the city. We're based near Bank. I was the first ex-military candidate recruited by Redington earlier this year, back in January. And prior to that, I spent 7 years in the infantry. I was in the Prince of Wales Royal Regiment, and I left as a captain.
In today's webinar, Jake is going to cover off on the fact that there are significant opportunities in cybersecurity for ex-military, and he's going to explain some of that. But he's also going to talk about the potential to succeed outside of ex-military schemes. So there are a lot of organisations out there that are running ex-military schemes, but this is by no means all the opportunities that can be out there for ex-military people. So it's good to have an awareness that networking and looking in other areas can really yield results.
Great. So what I'll do first is just give you an overview of Redington. So Redington is the fourth largest investment consultancy in the UK. We manage over 350 billion worth of assets. In terms of investment consultancy, we mainly deal with wealth funds, pensions. It's sort of protecting people's futures and managing large funds of money for people. We're an innovative tech company. We've got an outstanding culture, and I guess by that I mean we've got quite a millennial culture at work where we're quite relaxed. We've got flexible working, you can work from home, and in summer you get the benefit of being able to come to work in shorts and a t-shirt, which is quite an experience coming from the Army. So we run a scheme every January. It's called the Returners Scheme, and initially this year and in previous years it's been focused on helping women back into the workplace, although they did look to recruit retirees at one point. I initially joined Redington through the Returner Scheme as their first ex-military. Essentially, we're running the scheme next year, and it's gone well this year with both myself and a mixture of women returning to work. That we're going to run it again next year and hopefully recruit more ex-military into the company. So in terms of my role then, to briefly talk about it, I'm the Head of Information Security or Cybersecurity at Redington, and basically my role involves being the responsible, the accountable person for cyber, physical security, governance, compliance, and pretty much everything around the way Redington protects its data and its people. It's a really highly varied role. Every day is different, and it's got a really, really great balance of having a client-facing aspect, but there's loads of internal work as well. Every day is different, and what's great about cybersecurity and its role in particular is that there's always a threat out there, and although some days can be more challenging than others, there's no 2 days that are really the same, and there's so many different things I'm working on, both because of the role in information security and because of the size of the company, which is fairly small.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to ask you guys to answer a question, as you can see on the screen there. If you're considering a career in cyber, what are your key concerns? So we're going to share the results there. So we've got 21% of you saying you don't have the technical skills, 43% saying that you have no experience in cyber or IT, and 36% of you saying you don't know enough about the industry. So relatively evenly distributed there. And fortunately, none of you saying you won't find it interesting. What do you think about that, Jake?
So I guess the key part of this is before I started my resettlement, I ticked all the boxes. So I had no technical skills. I had no experience in cyber or IT. I mean, you don't really get much experience in cyber in the infantry. And I had no real idea about the industry or what opportunities there are. So that was before I started resettlement. So there is hope for everyone, I guess. If I can do it as an infantry, anyone can do it. So in terms of why cybersecurity then, so part of this is me selling it to you, and part of this is why I went into it. So what's great about cybersecurity is it leverages a lot of the skills you got from the military, particularly the niche ones that wouldn't be applicable to other areas. So often you hear there's loads of great transferable skills like leadership, teamwork, management, but there's a lot of niche skills like human surveillance, reconnaissance, and stuff like that that are quite niche skills that you can't really use in day-to-day life in consulting or banking, but actually in security work or information security, there's a lot of relevance for stuff like human intelligence gathering. The next one then is it's a relatively new industry. So at the moment, parts of cyber it's a bit like the Wild West really, and demand for cyber professionals, is massively outstripping supply. It's quite a new industry. If you consider the rise of computers in the 90s and the noughties, it's something that is relatively immature compared to finance, compared to consulting or insurance. So there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of potential, and the industry's got a lot of opportunities in the future in the way that it's going to grow. So effectively, the best way to see it is that if you get into cyber now, you're getting in at more or less the ground floor level. The third point then is you're fighting a threat, and coming from an army background, it's useful to have a purpose. It's useful to see results and to see what's happening. And I guess from my point of view, and hopefully your point of view as well, is that I always found that on operations, you take it a lot more seriously than in practice or an exercise. And having that constant threat out there not only makes it interesting, it means it's varied every day and you take it seriously. The fourth point then, which is kind of a bonus, it's sometimes quite difficult to talk about in terms of salary or pay bands, but you'll find that it's always there at the back of your mind. And with cybersecurity at the moment, there is a higher pay band for cybersecurity. It pays well, it pays better than the average, especially when you look at joining a large organisation. It does pay really well. And then finally, for me, and hopefully for you as well, I joined cybersecurity, or got into cybersecurity because I have a strong personal interest in it. It's something that really interests me. It's something that makes me want to go to work every day. And I guess if you're interested in something and you're passionate about it, then it's sort of half the battle in getting up in the morning and commuting.
Thanks very much, Jake. I'm just going to ask one question that we've had while we're on this slide. You mentioned about coming in because it's a new industry,
yes,
at the ground floor level, but obviously you are head of cyber security. So what do you mean by the ground floor level versus the kind of level that you find yourself in at the moment?
So in terms of ground floor level, I mean in terms of the wider industry. So if you compare cyber to insurance, so insurance has been around for years and years. I mean, I think Lloyd's was set up in the, don't quote me here, 17 or 1800s. But it's had time, insurance, banking and other sectors have had time to develop, and they've had time to really tap the potential out there. Whereas cyber, as you've talked about, it's something that, with the rise of computers in the 90s and noughties, it's something that there's so much potential. We've not fully explored the full percentage or full potential that's out there for cyber, and it's really interesting because there's so much untapped potential. There's so much that the industry can grow into out there, and that's what I sort of mean by the ground floor. I guess with my position in the company, in terms of Redington and the way I'm operating as head of information security, yes, I haven't gone into the ground floor, but at the same time, before I joined Redington, there wasn't a proper established information security function, so I've had the opportunity to grow it up from the ground floor. And there's hundreds of opportunities out there, especially with new legislation coming in like GDPR or various directives the government's pushing out. There's a lot of companies that now realise that they need cyber. And especially after things like WannaCry with the NHS last year, there's a lot of boards that now know that they need cyber and they need people to fill it. And that demand wasn't there a year ago, 6 months ago.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, Jake. One other question, kind of on what you've just recently been talking about, is about you mentioned the physical security and the cyber security.
Yes.
But someone has asked about personnel security. Is that part of your remit, or is that something that's an HR function?
No, it's entirely part of my remit. So essentially there's a holistic approach at the moment. It's not, cybersecurity doesn't just stop at the technical or the IT controls. At the moment, this year, particularly this year, social engineering is a big thing. So the best way to sum it up is that a fully patched operating system running something like Windows 10 is really, really difficult to crack. So all the stuff you've seen in Hollywood largely isn't true, where people hack into a bank account or a system. It's really genuinely very difficult to hack into, and you need significant resources to. However, if you've got untrained staff or personnel, you can socially engineer them, you can manipulate them, and often it's the weakest link in your security. So in fact, although my role is cybersecurity, a lot of the work I do is with training people, educating people, and making them aware of the dangers out there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jake.
Cool. So on this slide, the next one, I'm going to talk about my route into cyber, how I got my current role, and what I did. So I've split it down into two halves. The first half is recce or reconnaissance, and the second half is personal development. So on the recce side, so I started out by attending a couple of Officers Association events. So I went to the symposium a couple of years ago. The symposium, I believe it's renamed, might be renamed this year. I don't quote me on it. But it's essentially a huge event. It's held near Christmas every year. It's usually held at Deloitte. I think it's held at Deloitte again this year. And essentially a load of employers come down. There's a load of people looking for work. They have workshops, they have presentations, and it's a really great event that you can go to, so you can get an overview of so many different industries and roles that you've had no idea existed. And for me, it was a great way of, it's like a careers fair. It's a great way of seeing what's out there. From there, I did a lot of networking, and I'd say that networking was one of the most the most important thing for getting my job. And I think that it's quite a hotly debated topic. Some people think it's really valuable and some people don't. For me, I wouldn't have got my job without it. And a lot of the time it can seem pretty daunting to go and meet people. A lot of us don't like asking people for things or asking for help. And it can be demoralising at times. You know, you get on the train to London at 7:30 in the morning, you get a text from the bloke you're meant to be meeting that says, "Hey, sorry to cancel, can't see you today," and then you've got a train journey home. And I think that someone told me once that 20% of the networking you do is valuable, but you've really got to put the footfall in. So you've got to go out there and you've got to meet people. And it really is a numbers game, and you've got to chase up every opportunity. And for me, when I was at Sandhurst and looking for a regiment or looking for a cat badge, I went around as many regiments as possible to find out what I didn't like as well as what I liked. And I guess that's the best way to view it. And with military networking as well, so I guess the military networking in military terms, when you've got C and HC, so military networking gets you the C, gets you the pass, whereas if you can then expand and take it a step further and go into civilian network, then you get the HC. And a lot of people don't network with civvies. I don't know why. It's quite a daunting thing. It's a step into the unknown, and it's often quite safe just to network with military, ex-military, because you've got something in common with them. And it's harder to network in a civilian environment because one, they're stereotypically generally less reliable, but two, you don't have something in common with them necessarily, so it's harder to do. It's hard to take that first step, but there's so much untapped potential in civilian networks, and there's so many civilians out there that have links to the military and really want to help you out. Once you get into it and you start networking and you start going to various events of various industries that aren't military focused, there's so much potential there, and I'd highly recommend it. The next point in recce is with LinkedIn and OSINT, so open source intelligence gathering. So LinkedIn is absolutely awesome, and I think a couple of years ago I went on a Officers Association LinkedIn course or morning. It was really invaluable, and you'll find if you get your LinkedIn to a good place and you take all the tips on board, that people will come to you, recruiters will come to you and start messaging you, and you set your profile to, available for recruiters. And sometimes you have to filter them out, but people then start coming to you, and it makes your life a lot easier. And in terms of OSINT, so open source intelligence gathering, LinkedIn essential for this. So every time I wanted to go and find out more about a company, I'd go onto LinkedIn, I'd search for the company, and I'd find ex-military in the company. So I had a look at Amazon, I had a look at Google, and I found people that were ex-army in the companies, and I messaged them, asked them to go for a brew, and they took me up on the offer. And every company that I wanted to go and take a look at, I found ex-military in it, and they were more than happy to come and meet me. So I'd highly recommend it. But again, you've got to put yourself out there, and you've got to get above the parapet. Finally, on the recce side of things, what I found that was extremely useful was the shotgun approach to having as many interviews as possible. So I did as much networking and had as many interviews as possible and applied to as many companies, because you actually find out more about the industry or a company with the interviews you go to. And the more interviews you do, the better you get at it, and you get used to questions. And it's a really valuable way to learn about a company, but also to improve you and get you used to a certain style of interview in a certain industry. So I'd highly recommend going to as many interviews as possible, whether that's actual interviews or interview workshops set up by various groups.
Brilliant, thanks very much. Just on those things, there are interview and CV workshops that are run by companies that we advertise on our website, so do look out for those. And obviously the LinkedIn workshop that Jake has referred to is run periodically. There was one just a couple of days ago, in fact.
Yeah.
So, but if you've missed that, don't worry, there will be others.
Yeah, actually on that as well. So Barclays do a really great interview day. It's not widely advertised. I think they do it twice a year. And I think some of the MDs and I think even once a CEO got involved. And it's a fantastic opportunity. And people actually got hired off the back of the interview days because they were that good. And again, it's one of those things where you've got to invest the time, you've got to go to it.
And having attended some of these workshops, I know for a fact that these workshops are often hiring opportunities. Yeah?
Absolutely.
The organisation isn't doing it. I mean, it is doing it to help people, but their ulterior motive is obviously looking to hire people. So don't miss out on that aspect of it.
So the second half of my route is personal development. So for me, the best way to view it, or the way I viewed it, was the recce, so the networking side of things, got me the foot in the door, whereas the personal development side of things got me the job. So it's all right getting the foot in the door, but you need the credentials to back yourself up. So I was in the fortunate position of being medically discharged from the army, which actually gave me a lot of time to go and get these qualifications. So in between going through Headley Court, etc., I had the time to do a lot of personal development. So in terms of personal development that I personally went through, this is a list. So at the top, I've got something called the CISMP, which is the Certificate in Information Security Management Principles. If you need more information, my email's at the end and we can chat about it. But essentially, it's like the baseline information security, governance, management, qualification. It will get you, it's like the foundation level for managing within information security environment. So it's definitely worth doing. A top tip, you can pick up the book off Amazon for about 20 quid. The exam costs £160 and you can do it in your evenings. And then with 180 quid, you've got a great qualification.
And is there any opportunity to use any credits for that kind of thing? Are there any accredited providers, things like that?
I'm not sure if there's any accredited providers for that, but I think you can use the standard learning credits, which I don't know what they are now. I think they're about 150 quid, or used to be. They've probably gone down now. But yeah, you can by all means use standard learning credits and other stuff for that. Without the loop with exactly what the funding levels are at the moment. So the next one is CompTIA. So when I was in, I did the A+, the Security Plus, and the Network Plus, which are all CompTIA qualifications. So CompTIA, they are effectively the world leaders in technical IT cyber qualifications, and what they do is not only give you credibility, but they give you quite a deep technical understanding. So the best way to see it is that although you might be looking to go into a management role within information security or cyber security, you still need the technical backup. And so having been in the army and, being an army officer, you still need to know the role, the technical side of things. You've got the management skills, but particularly those that have been in the cause, you still need a technical understanding of what your soldiers do. And for me, that was the best analogy. So CompTIA, although I don't have the experience, I don't have the skills of like a 10, 20-year IT veteran, I understand what they're talking about and I can hold my own ground. You know, it gives me a good overview of what they do, and it means I know my job better. You can also, as a top tip as well, Aldershot and I think a couple of other areas, they actually run the courses, and you can use your resettlement grant to do a 2-week course where you do all 3 of them together. It's quite intensive, but it's well worth it. The next ones I did, so again, I had plenty of time on my hands. I did a lot of project management qualifications. So I did Prince 2, which is sort of the standard for project management. I did Agile, which is it's more of like an IT development style project management qualifications. It's gaining a lot of popularity, and I'd highly recommend it if you're getting into technology to do Agile rather than Prince 2. And then finally, I did ITIL, which is like an IT lifecycle project management style qualification. And again, doing these quals allowed me to see what I liked and what I didn't like, and it gave me more credibility and taught me more about the industry. And also importantly, as well as giving credibility, it showed that I had intent. I was a self-starter, and you know, I wanted to personally develop myself. Also, I became a chartered manager. So under the Army Skills Offer, which I'll touch on later, you can transfer a lot of your qualifications from the Army, so like JOTEC or Captain's Warfare course. You can get chartered manager or various levels of leadership and management with the Chartered Management Institute. It's largely free if you go to the Army Skills Offer and you use one of your grants, like your resettlement grant. I think it costs about £300. You can use a grant for it, and it gives you, again, more credibility and it shows intent. Finally, once I identified that I wanted to work in cyber, but also wanted to work in financial services, I completed the Investment Management Certificate, which is the IMC. It's quite an intensive qualification. It's widely recognised in the city as a really great qualification to have. And I also completed the CISI, which is the
Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment.
Perfect. I completed their course on securities. And with these two, so the financial quals showed that I had intent. I wanted to work in financial services, which is really important because when you go to various interviews, they will ask you, why do you want to work in finance? Why should we hire you? And this is great evidence. But also the qualifications allowed me to speak the language, and I can go into a meeting, I can hold my own, I can understand what people are talking about in my firm, and I'm not just nichely focused on cyber. I can do more than that.
A question that we've had about this slide is, have you ranked these in any order of importance?
Okay.
Or how, you know?
I haven't ranked them. I'd say if I was going into cyber, the most important one, I'd definitely do the certificate for Information Security Management Principles, so the CISMP, because that gives you a good footing, and I'd do CompTIA. I'd make those two probably my priority, and then you get a good understanding of the governance side of information security, and with CompTIA, then you get a good understanding of the technical side. Those are the two I'd focus on. In terms of project management, I think that Agile is a great qualification to have. Again, you can get that through your learning credits. And if you've got the time and resources, then the IMC is a great qualification to have if you want to work in finance.
Brilliant, thank you. Someone has made a comment that there are ELC providers that will help you with
yes.
CISMP, so
okay, perfect.
For people to know that.
Awesome. Okay, so I've got 2 pages of what I call life hacks now. It's stuff that, it's really quick snippets of stuff that I wish that I'd been told on day one of my resettlement. The first one is LinkedIn. I think we've covered that already, which is you need to use LinkedIn. You need to get yourself on the OA website, look at previous stuff, or get yourself to an OA workshop, and really maximise your use of LinkedIn. And again, with the reconnaissance side of things, if you want to work somewhere, look up someone in the company and message them up on LinkedIn. You can also get LinkedIn Premium free for a month. So if they've disabled the messaging function, get Premium for a month and message them, or just buy Premium for a month just to message people. But LinkedIn, you need to be all over it. The second one is CV. So there's a lot to cover, but really, really briefly, you need to have 2 pages of the CV, but ideally you should have like a master copy of maybe 2.5 to 3 pages. And then for each company you go to, you tailor it. So you find out the company's values, you find out what the company's about, and you tailor it. And it's really, really important. I've made this mistake before, but make sure you save the copy you send them. Have like a folder system so that when you get an interview with them, you can go back and you can see the exact CV you sent them. Finally, with CVs, make sure you civilianize them as much as possible. So everything needs to be translated. So platoon commander could be a project manager, an operations officer could be a chief operating officer. Everything can translate, and it needs to translate. And you'll find that doing a course like Prince2 or Agile will give you loads of terms like change management and risk management that you've probably done every day, but you just don't realize it, and you need to learn civilian terms. The next one is charity, entrepreneurs stuff, and sports are really big. I've seen a lot of companies that really want them on CVs, so make sure you include them. It just gives you that extra edge, along with your ex-military stuff, outside of the usual experience. Really quickly, I've been to so many interviews where they've asked me the share prices. On the first time I went, I had no idea, but every interview from then on in, I learned the share price of the company. It's something that catches a lot of people out. Just be really aware of it. Finally, on this page then is the STAR method. If you look it up later, it's called situation, task, action, and response. To me, when I heard it, I sounded really bone, and I thought, I'll never use that. However, on my first interview, I think I absolutely piled in colossally, and then someone taught me the STAR method, and I went through my notebook. I've still got it now, and it allows you to translate your experiences properly, because if you go into an interview and you start talking about 6 months in Afghanistan, their eyes are going to glaze over and they don't really know how transferable it is. But if they ask you about leadership and you use the STAR method, so you use situation, task, action, response, get your notebook out, write loads of examples, so when people ask you about problem solving, teamwork, risk, etc., you've got something, you've got a pre-planned answer.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think when you do your career transition workshop, they cover off on the STAR in that quite comprehensively. So I think that's a good point to make. And equally with the share prices, I've been to open days with other organisations who have all mentioned the fact that they want people to demonstrate a real interest in the industry, but also in their organisation. So, it might sound a bit, unnecessary to swat up on share prices, but if it's going to be an easy win for someone to ask you that question and for you to know the answer, then why not?
Exactly, but it's something you just don't think about.
No.
Don't think about profit and loss or share prices.
And you don't have to be an expert
to
show that you've had a bit of an interest and you are and have an awareness. So
the final life hacks I've got then, as I mentioned before, there's so many grants out there. So enhanced learning credits, standard learning credits. There's a resettlement grant, which I think is about £540, or it was when I left. You need to be all over these, and you need to be getting the maximum amount, and you need to work out exactly how to use it. It's no point in using your enhanced learning credits for a really cheap course. You need to be maxing out as much as possible. And there's so many hidden grants. It's worth, buying a brew for whoever is your deck commander and learning about every grant you can possibly get and milking it as much as possible. Likewise, there's some stuff you will have to pay for yourself if you're that determined. But yeah, you want to claim as much as possible. The next one's the Army Skills Offer. So again, it's not that well known, but you can translate a lot of your Army educational qualifications, so like JOTAC, Captain's Warfare course, etc. And you can get a shiny certificate for free for like a level 6 or level 5 chartered manager in leadership and management. It's absolutely free. Again, it shows intent, and it's a no-brainer if it's free. The next one is networking groups. So there's some really, really great networking groups out there that cut down a lot of time. If you're meeting 1 or 2 people for a coffee a week, a networking group, you can meet 10, 20 people in a night and learn a lot, a lot of things really, really quickly. So in terms of networking groups, off the top of my head, the List is a really great networking group in London. They do I think it's a Thursday once a month, where loads of people from various ex-military or various ex-military get together.
The Liquid List.
Yeah, the Liquid List, that's the one. But yeah, there's loads of networking groups and there's loads of opportunities out there. The next one is self-starter. It's a phrase that I had no idea what it meant when I left the army, but it's used a lot in my work and in the industry. And essentially, it means someone who is willing to self-start, is willing to develop themselves, and they show initiative. And what companies want to see is they want someone that will do work off their own back, that will have the initiative. And if you go away and you get qualifications and you work hard and you network, demonstrates that you want to be there and you want to be part of the industry, and ultimately to the company it demonstrates that you're going to be an asset to them and you're going to continue developing whilst you're there. So it's really important that you have evidence of being a self-starter. The next one is salary. So it is a dirty word, and I found it really, really, really difficult when I was leaving the army to know what my salary expectations was. I had no idea what I should be demanding. I had no idea how to approach it, and it's a really, really difficult conversation to have, because obviously you don't do it in the army, and the longer you've been in, the more difficult it gets. There's a website called Glassdoor. I wish I'd heard of it earlier, and it gives you an idea of salary brackets within the company. There's also something called the Army Benefits Calculator or the Navy Benefits Calculator. If you type it into Google, it will show you the amount of benefits you get whilst being in the army. So it totals up your pension, it totals up the fact that you don't have to buy work clothes or commute, etc. And it should give you a rough indication. It's always great to have that in your back pocket as well. And the other way that I got on the salary situation was I just asked ex-military, I explained the situation, they'd been in it. And again, if you network with people, you get an idea of what the salary expectations are. And finally, on the life hack front, really, really quickly, is that you need to have an eye on the future. So more and more jobs are getting automated at the moment through all levels, whether that you're on the trading floor or whether you work in a warehouse. And you need to have an eye on what skills you have that can't be automated. So things like relationship management, and you need to get into an industry and you need to secure a career where automation is difficult, or you're involved in the process, or you have some control over it. And it might seem something that's far away, but it's already happening in the city, and you need to be aware of it, and you need to make decisions based on it.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Jake.
So in summary then, I'd say that the two big takeaways for myself then are networking gets you the foot in the door, but ultimately personal development will get you the job. You need the credibility, but you also need to know where you're going. And I'd really, really strongly advise that everyone takes the time to network outside of the usual military circles, and you take a look out at the roles outside the ex-military schemes. Often can be the path of least resistance to the way to go on an ex-military scheme. It's quite easy to go there. They're very difficult to get onto, but you can get drawn to them like a moth in a way, and you need to make sure that you look at roles outside of them. You need to work hard and you need to network outside, because there's some really interesting roles out there that aren't on schemes or aren't advertised. I mean, for my company, Redington, I had no idea they existed 2 weeks before I had an interview with them. It just came up through networking, and there's so many opportunities out there that you aren't aware of, and particularly in cyber. I think that's it as a summary.
But I think, just to reinforce, I think the key is networking. I think networking gives you knowledge, it gives you contact,
sure,
and it gives you opportunity, which, and the bottom line, as you said it earlier, you wouldn't have your job if it wasn't for networking. So exactly. I feel like when I talk to people about networking that I'm kind of banging a drum or whatever, but it's good to hear that it really does work.
It genuinely does work, and you find out about opportunities. So, for example, there's a really great ex-military academy for cyber down in Brighton called Crucial Academy that are doing some great work with getting ex-military into cyber. And again, without networking or without getting on LinkedIn, I'd have no idea they existed. It was a bit before my time, a bit after my time. Unfortunately, I'd love to have gone there. And there's other people I've networked with on LinkedIn that have written articles about military and cyber, and you just message them, and it really genuinely does work.
Okay, cool. Well, what we're going to do now, before we move on to some questions, is just do a final poll, just to ask, how many of you, perhaps if you joined the webinar just out of interest, are perhaps now considering cyber. So we're just going to launch that poll and ask you to respond, if you will. So we've got 60% of people saying that they were thinking of cyber already, 7% saying they weren't, but they are now, and 33% saying they weren't, but they might now. And none of them saying it's not for them, so encouraging there.
Sure. And it's just really important to know that there's so many roles out there in cyber that you are very capable of doing, but you just don't know they're out there or don't think you're capable of doing them. And what's really great, or a great route, for example, is to have one foot in what you know and one foot in what you don't. So if you got into cyber project management, you're working in cyber, which is one foot in what you don't know, but you're working in project management, which is a familiar ground, having been in the military. So there's ways you can get into cyber but maintain a level of familiarity, and there's a lot of transferable skills from the army beyond the usual communication teamwork that are applicable.
Brilliant, thanks, Jake. So what we're going to do now is we've got a bit of time to spend answering some of the questions that you've been sending in. We've answered some of them as we've gone along, but I'll ask a basic one that came up quite early on, which is when you talked about investment consultancy.
Yes.
I think a few people wanted to know what exactly that was and how it is different to a bank, for example, an investment bank.
So with investment consultancy, the simplest way to explain it is that we don't handle any money. We advise people on how to invest their money. So pretty much everything up until the point of actually transferring the money. So large pension funds or large wealth funds will contract us as investment consultants. So we consult with them as to where to invest their money. So we have various departments that have like front of house or client relations, and then we'll have more backroom staff that calculate returns in it, and we give out quarterly reports, and we maintain client relationships. Essentially, it's helping people or helping funds grow their money. And yeah, I guess with Redington in particular, what particularly interested me is they had a purpose. So the purpose of Redington is to help 100 million people become financially secure, both through helping pension funds, helping grow pension funds or improve them, but also through financial education.
Okay, thanks, James. We've had a few kind of specific questions. So someone has asked, did you need any, or do you need any technical experience prior to doing CISMP?
So no, it was the first qualification I did. I had no technical experience. Again, reinforcing the fact that I came from the infantry, and I just studied. I studied in the evenings. I got the books off Amazon, and then when I was ready, I took the exams. But a lot of it is fairly easy to understand. It's not that technical. And you'll find as well there's sections in the CISMP that are on physical security, and there's sections that, although they have some technical elements to them, a lot of it logically makes sense to someone like yourself that would have that security mindset. And I guess as well, sorry to branch off, but the security mindset is your biggest asset, and there's a lot of people working in the city or in cyber or in IT that don't have it, and it's something that money can't buy, and it's something that you've honed for years in the army, and you can eventually get or gain the technical experience, you can gain the qualifications, but the mindset and having that security mindset and being aware of threats and risks is something that money can't buy.
Someone has asked specifically what cyber functions you cover. Cyber hygiene, information management, defensive cyber monitoring.
So with myself, I am sort of a one-man band at Redington, so I work closely with the technology team, but I am responsible for the entirety of cyber at Redington. So my day will, or my week or month will involve elements where I work with compliance or legal. I might work on the governance side of things. I might work with our risk team. I could work at a very technical level if we've got a threat or we've got an attack on us. So I sort of cover all bases really. And the best way to describe it is that it's sort of a mile wide but an inch deep. And with myself, I rely on a lot of expertise from various individuals, whether that's legal, whether that's IT, whether that's development, and it's a lot of it is utilising the skills I've had in the army, whether that's leadership, management, and getting the most out of people.
Cool, thank you. Something about people. Did you ever consider going into self-employed consultancy? Yeah. for cyber? And if so, did you have any tips there?
It's something that I've not considered. I know that several people that have gone into it or gone into forming their own companies, and I guess from my point of view, having thought about it recently, is you need to bring something to the table that people don't have or other companies don't have. You need to compensate for your potential lack of experience in the industry, and if you build on and utilise and leverage the skills you've got in the military that are largely unobtainable to a lot of people in the city, I think that would be your unique selling point.
Someone's asked a specific question about, at the moment, BT are hiring quite extensively in their cyber space. And on the jobs that are advertised, they mention BCS CCP quite a lot. Is that something that you know anything about, or is it a kind of comms specific?
So I think the
BSG certified professional.
So the BCS is the British Computer Society, I think. I don't know the other acronym. If you can give me a moment, I will come back to you on that. But I know that I was at BT a couple of weeks ago, and they are seriously highly invested in cyber at the moment. So having gone to one of their events recently, they are hiring. They take it really really seriously, and they have a really good infrastructure in place. I think it's a really decent company to work for. I will get back to you on that.
Oh, don't worry. Don't worry. There are on our website there are webinars about BT specifically and people that you can contact there. So do reach out to those people if you want to. One person is saying that when he asks people about cyber, he gets kind of blank faces. Are there any kind of specific questions that you ask that helped open doors when you were trying to network about cyber?
So I guess with my networking, I networked a lot across the city, so in various industries, whether that's consulting, insurance, financial services, etc. And as you network, the opportunities sort of arise. So I went to the Lloyd's Military Network. I went to a few of their events in insurance. They're a really great scheme for ex-military getting into insurance. And some of the guys there got to work into cyber, and it's another opportunity that you wouldn't think about, cyber insurance. And I guess it's a lot of it, you will get blank faces at times, and a lot of networking is it's a numbers game, and you have to keep asking the questions, you have to keep speaking to people, and you will go to networking events, whether they're banks or consultancy firms, and you will have to keep speaking to people, and eventually someone will say, hey, that guy in the blue suit in the corner, he's our cyber expert, and you go and speak to them, or you ask them if they know anyone. But yeah, it's not a usual route to go into for ex-military. It's not standard, but again, it is a numbers game with the networking side of things.
Well, and especially if it's a growing industry, and as you point out, BT are really hiring at the moment, and that's a big company where there'll be lots of opportunity. One final question. Someone has asked, you mentioned going to lots of interviews.
Yes.
Were you offered jobs, and if so, how did you turn them down, or how did you know you turned them down?
I've offered a few jobs, and fortunately, I think the 3 jobs that I really wanted, one of them was obviously Redington. The 3 offers came in the same week, and
like buses,
which was really fortunate because I could look at all 3 of them. But it is a really nerve-wracking position, so I turned down a few quite early on, and it's a really nervy position to turn down a potential job when you're leaving the army, and there's a huge amount of risk involved. I mean, there's a huge amount of fear. You're stepping into the unknown, but you know what you don't know, and you've got to make that decision, and you can't just go for the first thing possible. And I guess with the delaying tactics, so I had to delay one ex-military bank for a week, and I just managed to delay them by telling them I think I was going on holiday or something. And I mean, if you've been in the army, you know how to make excuses.
Good point. Well, I think that's it for our questions this evening. But we've had a lot of engagement, and hopefully people feel that their questions have been answered. Jake has very kindly offered up his email at work there if you did want to email him with specific questions. And obviously have a look at Redington itself, and you mentioned the returners programme, which will be in January. Otherwise, I hope that there's been some useful advice there on qualifications, training, using all the resources that are available to you with the military, which, actually is really great. And so hopefully people will be able to look at those and get as much out of it as they can, either before they leave, or certainly some of those credits you can use after you leave, can't you?
And so my email address is on the page. You can probably see it now. I received a huge amount of help from the ex-military community, from lance corporals to ex-generals, and I'd love to pay that forward. So if you have any questions, no matter how bone they are, please just email me. Take a look at Redington as well. So we run a returner scheme. We're hiring again in January. It's a really great scheme, but we also do a lot of direct hires. If you want any more information, email myself, or you want any help getting into cyber, or just have any questions in general about anything in the city, more than happy to help. My email address is at the bottom.
That's very generous, Jake. Thank you. So a couple of points that we've kind of touched on this evening. One, Jake was very kind and mentioned our Officers Association Symposium that we have on an annual basis. It will be returning this year on the 10th of December, date for your diary. It will be renamed the Officers Careers Forum, but details should be going up on our website shortly. Also, you've talked about LinkedIn quite a lot, the importance of being all over that and really using it to its best advantage. There are LinkedIn workshops that we run, but also all the career consultants, myself included, are very happy to run one-to-one LinkedIn sessions for you. So do take advantage of that, and you can book those online. And I thought it was really interesting, Jake's point about automation and thinking about the skills that you have that can't be automated. And surely the military is one of those areas where, automation will be the last bastion. So really think about all those skills that you've developed in the military and how those are going to be useful in your civilian career ahead. But thanks, Jake, for your time this evening. We're really grateful to you.
You're welcome.
And good luck, everyone, with your future careers. And thanks for joining us.